Take a break, Mike.
Just take a break.
I suspect, and we may be here for just a little bit. I'm sure, and I think we're all aware in the room as we came in tonight, there's probably going to be a lot of conversation and questions about some of the numbers that you're seeing here and what we've put together and proposing. A lot of it's not real comfortable, but if you look at the numbers of how this fund has performed, going back as far as 2014, and I don't have the data to tell me otherwise, but I would guess if I went back to 12, 13, and probably even prior to that, I'm going to continue to see this same type of performance where we're operating in the red and we're depleting cash. This is an enterprise fund, and we have not probably addressed the rates in this area. We know that we have the water rate study. Terry and I were working on them and had to stop partway through to get into the budget. But we did get far enough along that as we broke everything down and began to look at this, we said, what's it going to take for us to begin to operate this at a positive balance or at bare minimum break even, so we can maintain those cash reserves for future projects. So if no one has any questions on this slide, I'll move to a couple of highlights that we can talk about, and then get into some conversation from there.
So just a quick question.
Sure.
So on the revenue over expenditure side for 14 at $695,000.
Yeah.
So is that cumulative going
so
across the page, or is that
what that is? No, that is not cumulative. That is that year. Okay. I will note that when you look at 15 and you look at 16, you look at the bottom down there, that those two numbers are skewed. There is an adjustment that was not made in 15 that was supposed to have been made, so it carried over into 16. So if you average the two of it out, that's realistically what you're looking at for those 2 years.
That's why I asked the question.
Yeah, that's it. It was just an accounting issue right there. So
the $404,000 for the revised 2017 budget.
Yes,
that is without an increase.
That is without an increase.
And so
that is carrying along as we've been going.
So up there in the revenue side, where there's $3.595 million. That doesn't include the 5% increase as well, correct?
Actually, that is built into part of it, but the sewer piece and there are some other revenues that come into play on that that are carrying that along and bolstering up that number. That can also that might be a little bit on the aggressive side potentially as well.
This 3.6.
Yeah.
Okay.
So now as we move into 18, I think we're more comfortable with what we were looking at and making some of those adjustments and recommendations.
Well, you're correct. This is not a comfortable conversation, but we got to have the conversation.
It is not. It is not.
I mean, we're going to have the conversation. It's going to have to be candid. And, we need to look at it because obviously we're not headed in the right direction. And how much is that reserve fund?
The reserve for this?
Yeah.
Okay. If everyone's good, Leonard, you good? I'm going to move over to the next slide that's going to break some of this stuff down for us.
Well, maybe you do that, then go back.
Absolutely. And Gary, I'm going to do the same, so we can go back and forth in between this slide and the next one. There's some other slides that's going to help support part of what we're talking about and part of where the conversations potentially may go.
I think the question I've got, it's, we know we're not generating enough revenue.
Sure.
We know that we haven't been evaluating our expenses, particularly in water treatment side of it. But yet, and this is going back to PEC's, no, Lochner did the rate study, right?
Yeah.
One of the entries in the spreadsheet dealt with administrative salaries.
Sure.
And it seems like we're taking an excessive amount from water sewer and putting into general fund, which hurts water sewer treatment, but yet it helped the general fund. And in some senses, it's an easy way to shore up general fund in that manner. But, you know, we're at a point that we're kind of suffering both sides. So, you know, at what point do we get realistic with administrative salaries and let water sewer fund support itself, and then look at our general fund operation that we have to do with what we need to do there? It's like we've hurt one for the benefit of the other, but now we're looking at both of them as valuation decreases. You know, we can kind of get a double cut that, you know, what I guess you're looking at what we need projected revenue is substantial.
It is. And, you know, just to address that transfer, you know, and I'm new to city government or governmental finance, period. But through some of my interactions with some of the classes that I have attended and had an opportunity to sit through, and water rates just happened to be an opportunity. I said, hey, I'm going to go to that one. And a gentleman from Wichita State was there. And I guess they're involved heavily in doing a lot of this through whichever department. I think Terry's familiar with it. It is not uncustomary. I think it's a very customary practice throughout the state of Kansas that the general fund administratively does pull out of these enterprise funds. And he said from our conversation, 15% was not out of line necessarily from doing any of that. And I think that we can have those discussions here in a little bit. This is a new practice that's just went back in the last 5 years. This has been going on. Kelly's went back and done some research. This is going back clear into the 90s when this practice began, and maybe even prior to that. So this isn't anything new, but in the meantime, we've had some other issues, and we've not grown that revenue along with these changes in the water department. They just haven't happened, and consequently, we're suffering from a revenue standpoint. We're suffering from deferred maintenance and not addressing the capital projects that we need. And this is an opportunity. Again, I understand we all are going to pay for this. That, you know, we need to look at some increases to get us back in line to where we're at, and to keep this boat floating positively.
Yeah, it's. I know it's a common practice, but when you can't do your maintenance and you keep repeatedly, and you know, I know this isn't a recent practice. It's been going on, like you found out, since the 90s. But you know, we've sold the chart that showed our mill levy, how we've maintained the mill levy steady for so many years. We haven't raised the mill levy, but what we've done is we've taken the money from this fund to keep it there, but now we're looking at what happened because we did that. We're looking at over $3 million repair to the water treatment plant. And, you know, I think I want to make sure that from this point on, we don't let that happen again.
Sure, and I
that
think you're
we-
going to see some things in there that where we are addressing it, and obviously with the deal with PEC and contracted them and those improvements, they're built in and captured in what we're looking into. There's some other pieces that may be necessary to come along with it. There may be some things that we need to adjust here. As we said, this is proposed. We understand that there's going to be conversations on this.
I think
So-
we've worked hard to address some maintenance issues,
Yeah.
and when we leave, we don't want to leave it for the next commission, for the next city staff to have to address. We've got to set it in the right course. That we're not taking money so that we can't maintain what we've got. We've got to look realistic. That if we need to raise the mill levy to handle general fund, we do it.
And
That
that's
we be
certainly
honest
an
and-
option that's on the table. I mean,
See, that
we
was
can look at that.
The reason that you make the transfers is so that the mill levy for the general fund isn't increased.
That and in part, there's staff and there's other resources within the general fund that goes to support what occurs there
And
in
that's-
the water wastewater department.
So there's a gap then.
Yeah, there is a
There's-
gap.
there's a
There
gap.
is a gap, and there is money owed back to support that general fund. Because we could probably take several staff and just completely assign them to them if that's the case, because that's and part of that's in my office. They primarily I have two that primarily don't do anything but deal with and work with all the utility billing.
So you could move those expenses to the water fund.
I'm just using that
I got
as a
you.
minor example, but there's other pieces that come with it. There's overhead that comes with it. There's other supports and get billing. There's a variety of different things.
Yeah, and I think that's reasonable. But if you can't justify that as $600,000 or $700,000, and we have problems that we can't fix with I&I, with water leaks, with equipment, because we've taken it out, over a period of time, if repairs were done, we wouldn't be looking at big tickets, but, doing the upgrades as needed, but to always say we don't have money because we haven't managed
Sure.
correctly.
No, I understand that. I think everybody sitting at this table understands it. And,
I most definitely understand it.
Well, if we're not asking these questions and visiting with you, then it just puts more stress back on everyone else trying to maintain a treatment plant or trying to maintain a service line. I know one intersection when the new water tower went on, there's 7 breaks within a week. And that's got to be frustrating when you've got other things to maintain, to coming back, and the reason that we didn't see that we're putting money into replacing antiquated water lines. And I think as commissioners, that's what we need to make sure we're understanding and communicating to let us know if there's a problem, that we can address it and not let it become major.
sure.
See, and we can talk about the past all night long. That's not going to solve what we have to address going forward.
Right, we just
so-
need to not do the
so-
same thing.
We
Right.
get the
So-
unfortunately we get the unfun part of this.
Right. So show us the unfun part that we
Okay.
have to.
Here's the reality of what we're facing. So through 14 through 16, and then what was projected for both 27 approved and revised, operating a loss, that 4-year period, the average loss in this fund was $715,000. 2018 rates include both water increases and sewer increases. Keep in mind that we're going to have 2 new loans involved in 2018. We have our water treatment facility loan
For the electric part?
for the electric, all the upgrades that were involved with PEC. And looking at that, when that thing's fully funded, you're looking at roughly $200,000 a year repayment on that over a 20-year period of time. Sewer, wastewater, I'm sorry. Craig doesn't like sewer. He made me promise I wouldn't say the S word tonight, so I let it slip. Wastewater, we're opening up a new KDH wastewater loan with them as well, and basically the same amount. So there's another $200,000. These are going to be used. These funds are going to be used to address a lot of these significant problems that have been put off. So they have to be rolled back up and captured as well with any rate increases. So on the sewer wastewater side, I had initially put in a 5% increase, which is minimal, and I think that's been standard practice for the last several years. But in addition to that, I stuck the additional $200,000 in debt service to go along with that. On the water side, the projected increase necessary on the edge was $1.5 million, and that included the $200,000 on that side as well. So when we look at this, and no, Terry and I don't have everything completed on the water rate study, but we've got a good basis of drilling down in the numbers now. We can back into them somewhat. But just as an estimate, what does that do? If you are a citizen in the community and you use 4,000 gallons a month, what does that mean to you? And I use that specific number because that's our heaviest concentration of user group out there. That would mean on the water side, a $23 a month increase. Okay. Now that can be massaged, moved around a little bit here and there, and in a variety of different ways. On the wastewater side, on the sewer side, what does that increase mean for the same gallon usage? You're looking at about a little bit less than $5, $4.87.
That's for now, Mike. That was for what again?
That's
Okay.
wastewater.
So you,
wastewater is $4.87. The water side, and these are estimated. I want to emphasize that $23.12 on the water side. So total $27.99 is what that monthly impact would look like.
so you add those two together to get that number.
Yeah,
And $4,000 is representative of
4,000 gallons.
4,000 gallons, which is representative of
Very
there's that
large
old
piece.
Pareto.
Yeah, there's a
where
very
you
large
have
piece of the
80%,
pie. Yeah,
The 80-20 split.
yep.
Is that?
That is the
That's-
biggest group.
That's their average user, if you will.
Yeah.
The average residential user.
What's it do to commercial?
Didn't have an opportunity to really dig into that. It spikes it up pretty good as it goes down. But again, we haven't refined this completely, so there's some things that we need to see on that. I don't have that number for you tonight. I wanted to be able to give you an idea of what that would look like.
Was our rate study by Lochner beneficial?
It has been, and it provided a lot of information that it's pulled a lot of stuff together. And Terry and I have been able to sit down and kind of dig through it and make sense of it.
The part
Craig-
that never made sense to me, and that was equity.
Equity.
Yeah.
I mean,
Well, we got it figured out. We know what the equity piece of it is, and understand where he was trying to get to. It was just I don't know why he took that particular approach. It created some confusion up here, and because of that confusion, I think we created some additional confusion back on him. And really, it just didn't even need to be brought into the equation. And looking at it, our system itself isn't completely broken. So I think we can apply what we have and massage it a little bit, make sure that we're accounting for, yes, the commercial groups. We want to be very consumer or commercial friendly here. I mean, we want the businesses here. They're the ones that create the jobs, and you create the jobs, they drive valuation, sales tax, keeps the people here. So we want to keep that positive there, but we also need to keep in mind how we treat our residential users as well.
Yeah, because the residential customer can't carry the brunt of the increase.
Yeah,
it's got to
that's
be
right.
across the board.
Yeah.
It's a balancing act. It's a delicate balancing act.
It is. I mean, this has
delicate.
been a very interesting and educating process for me. I mean, I don't want to speak for Terry, but I think him as well in looking at this. But
Interesting for you too, Hunter. Yeah.
so, just going a little bit further, you got to understand if we've been operating over the last 4 years at an average of $750,000 in the red, our balances as we have them projected right now for the 2017 revised is pulling our reserves down to the end of 2017 to 1.3 million, and then as is proposed in 2018, because we're showing a little bit of a positive balance there. There's a minor positive impact to that balance. But if we continue on at the rate that we are, we're going to pull that down, and we're not going to have that available either to make other improvements. So we talk about the transfer, the reimbursements, because actually it's not a transfer; it's a reimbursement back to the general fund. And as we look back just at 2016, what's in there for 2017 revised, and then also 2018, the percentages of that reimbursement back to the general fund as a percentage of total revenue was 18.7 in 2016. So we're not far out of line on that.
Well,
2017 revised, we're at 18.5, and then for 2018, that number is 12.4% of that total revenue.
percentage is always kind of the end results of reality.
Sure.
And as long as it's realistic, the percentage isn't that important. But what I guess, like Fred said, looking back, we've got to look to the future, and what you've pointed out is pretty dismal of how much we were short each year. What steps are being taken that we don't let this happen in the future then?
Well, I think, number one, putting together a good operating plan, good roadmap for us to guide ourselves to go down. There's more work that needs to be done on this as we look at the rates operationally, capital-wise, infrastructure, how we build up the reserves and maintain those reserves. As we look at the capital for this, it's not going to get any brighter if we don't make these increases in 2018, because we are going to have $400,000 of additional expenses hitting us with these two new loans that we're taking out. It's coming. If we make these improvements, $400,000 a year is just more that's going to be getting tapped onto this fund.
And see, we can't do that if we don't adjust our income to cover that expense.
Absolutely.
We just have to look at, if we're going to add that to our expense, and we've got to make sure the revenue is there to cover it. We can't just wish and hope.
And we do have that built into these increases. Another thing that Terry looked at and wanted in there, we want to build in specifically this year and hopefully in years going forward, 500 capital project reserve, so we can start funding some of these things without having to go to the bank and finding those resources to fund this stuff, and stay on top of it. Get on top of these water lines that need to be replaced. The I&I aspect of what you were talking about earlier. I think that this starts putting Terry in a position to operate successfully. I think that he's been really saddled with some issues and really restricted on how he can manage.
Well, you mentioned during the rate study that we look at a line item that as the debts are serviced, that this continues on so that we're not always based on borrowing, but we're generating money.
Right
to an
now,
item
what
that
I've
we
showed
can-
you up here kind of has everything just lumped together, but we're isolating those pieces of it so that we can identify exactly what that is. And
The maintenance isn't ever going to go away.
No,
even,
it's not.
Even the new lines we've just put in the last 4 years are going to have to be replaced in the future, the manholes.
Yeah.
And we got to keep money coming in to do that. When we stop, get new, and say, well, now I don't need to maintain it, we've deceived ourselves, and we're going to be right back where we
So
came from. So this is
when you look at, as I recall with the study, and you'll have to help me remember,
Okay.
there's a significant increase the first year, and then it was moderated significantly in
Thereafter. Subsequent years.
Is that your plan? Is that what you're looking at for?
We are. It's similar in that respect. However, the level of increase that we're talking about, as opposed to what the plan was talking about, is less, quite a bit less. I think we were really hoping to get away with a little bit less of an increase this first year and build it up over 3 years. But when we really got in there and started really understanding where we'd been and where we're at, and what we were doing to our cash, we felt like to get this thing back to break even now, the increase was more than what we wanted, but that's what it's taken. So I think subsequent years would be less significant, considerably less significant than what we saw previously.
So with this $5.3 million proposed income, which is a significant increase
Yes, it is.
over your proposed, would be 26,000 basically more in revenue than expenses,
Correct.
if I'm reading this correctly.
That is correct.
Which gets us out of that
Eat
debt
that
hole,
cash.
so to speak.
Yeah,
Cash, because it becomes a cash issue is what it becomes.
it does.
Yeah. Well,
Terry, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I would like to make one comment, and it has to do with the reimbursement. I think we need, going forward, we need to sit down and really drill down into this reimbursement and what actually is overhead and what's reimbursement. There's a lot of things I think aren't taken into account, that, like the water department, sewer department providing free services to the rest of the city. That's not taken into account, but yet we have to pay our overhead for what the city does for us. Things like that. We really need to look at what the expenses are and what a fair reimbursement is to look at these issues, and that could help a lot with future rate increases and where that goes.
And we've looked at that, and we've talked about that, and unfortunately we don't have that answer today, and it's going to take some time to determine those things and get to a formula where we're consistent with it.
It's been broke for a long time, and it's not going to be fixed overnight. But
Yeah.
we got to get
It's not going
going
to
in
be
that.
fixed by next year or
See,
even the next 2 or
I
3 years.
understand what you're
It's
saying
gonna
about the
take time.
reimbursements, but in some ways you're robbing Peter to pay Paul.
Dollars are dollars, and it's
I mean,
and it's,
it's
how it's
all-
going to come.
It all swims in the same bucket there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'm not disagreeing with you, Terry. I'm just
Yeah.
see it from
the
I see it from a devil's advocate standpoint.
the,
of
the
view.
mill rate, the tax cap that they put on even makes it more difficult to
Well,
deal with this
I got
issue.
you on that.
They need to repeal that. And
I got some phone numbers I can give you.
Gary, you're quiet again.
Mike, you know I'm always quiet.
Is that good or bad?
I think we've talked about this one a lot of times, and that's why we had the rate study, and I think we've all agreed we got to move forward and get the improvements underway and do whatever we have to do with the rates to cover it. I don't want to beat this to death.
Well, that's a good point. I mean, so from your standpoint of view, there's not really any other alternatives but to have this type of a
Short of continue to eat up cash. I mean, we could phase into this, but there again, we're going to eat up valuable cash that could be used in the future for other projects. We're just consuming it.
Well, with the issues we've got in the water distribution and wastewater collection system, we really don't have an abundance or a surplus in that, because if we address all the issues, that would all be gone. There's enough problems in the lines and in other areas that would consume whatever we're calling surplus. So, we need that money there. And you look at 26,000 over expenses, that's
Yeah, I mean that's
not
nothing.
much.
I mean,
that just
you
stabilizes
You
it.
get in a drought. And again, these are still preliminary numbers, but we get in a drought. We have fewer users. We have less consumption. Whatever the case is, I mean that's all based on us collecting every single one of those dollars and controlling our cost along the way.
But if you look at ground shifting and wastewater lines collapsing or
Sure.
distribution lines rupturing, 26,000 goes real quick.
Yeah, I mean that's.
it's just
Well,
that's
what we'd be adding to the surplus. I mean, we already have. We've talked about the surplus, but when you look at rate studies, the key thing in a rate study is that capital amount and how much you reinvest every year. You want to build into your rate study the ability to reinvest in your infrastructure. And there's guidelines for that. I've seen it from 1% to 2% of your assessed of the value of your infrastructure, and that's where you kind of target your rates to help cover that. And typically, rates don't. And that's why you typically see a big jump in the first year of rate studies. This isn't uncommon that I've seen in the past. And certainly there are options. I mean, Mike, I think mentioned phasing this. We already would, even if we did this amount, we'd still do some more over the next 5 years as well. But maybe not this big a chunk the first year, and maybe,
yeah,
little more the
absolutely
second
not.
year.
I think
there's
this is
options
taking
like
care of
that
a
you
lot.
look at.
I think future increases are going to be
Key
a
thing
lot
is to
less.
kind of, you have a fiscal policy of how much do we want to reinvest in our system, what it's worth.
So in some ways, this is doubling our current revenue. for
This
that-
does, yeah.
For,
Yep.
I mean, it's doubling our current revenue for,
On
Water.
the water side.
On the water
It's a little bit in it. It's a little bit more than that, but part of that is the $200,000 additional loan that's got to be recaptured there. The sewer is, which it was much smaller impact to the difference in the current income stream.
Terry was right. I mean, that was the key point that he made there, is that going forward, we ought to have a clear fiscal policy on especially that transfers, what's reasonable, what's rational. I mean, as Mike mentioned, he went to a seminar or whatever, and they talked about 50%. Well, that's a rationale. I mean, you use 15%. Is that a rationale, or you drill down into actual numbers? There's different ways of doing that. But going forward, you're right. Get a clear policy. And the other clear policy is, again, how much do we spend on capital? How much do we reinvest in the system to keep it going? So down the road, we don't.
Right.
5 years from now, we're having modest rate increases, or, instead of 100%, 170% increases in 1 year. But like it's been made, you can't fix it overnight. So it'll take. I think it'll take the next 5 years to try to put that rate structure together, and that's what we'll come back with on the rate study. Is looking at that next 5 years.
Yeah. What else can we answer for you, gentlemen, on this particular item?
I don't have any more questions.
I don't have any more questions.
Gary?
Nope.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't have any more questions. I just worry about the impact.
I know. I
The
think
impact
we're all
is just-
concerned about that.
I mean, it's quite an impact, especially for folks on fixed incomes
And I think that one thing that Terry and I spent a lot of time talking about that, how to make sure on that fixed income, people that are going to be out there that are going to be living in between that 1 and 3,000 range, how do we keep that minimized? And I think part of what we've talked about is not. Lochner was really driving up that base rate. I mean, he was really pushing it up there in the $20 to $30 range, and we want to keep that significantly less than that. And by doing that, it'll force some of the additional increases on down the line.
they were almost more than doubling that, weren't they? Like
Yeah.
3 timesing it?
Oh, maybe 4 even.
Not very good English, but
Yeah. So
Fred,
yes.
I think we really have to keep it in perspective. If I look at my utilities, my monthly utilities at home, I have water, I have electric, I have gas, my cable. My gas and electric are 3 or 4 times my water, and my cable's 5 times my water or more. And frankly, the water is the most important. It's the only one we can't live without. So, I feel it's important to do the right thing, even though it's gonna bite the 3 of us in the butts. Because people are gonna be upset if we have a big increase. But
they're going to be mad at everybody in this room,
Well,
other than Charlotte and Jerry. I don't mean to drag you two in it.
we don't.
We'll blame Terry.
there you go. Second to mine.
Just kidding, Terry. But yeah, Gary, I agree with you. I it's significant. I knew it was going to be significant. We've known all along that we needed to do a significant increase to make this all work out.
And in terms of, we talked a little bit about economic development and commercial rates, and we don't want to drive. One thing I haven't seen is a comparative. I mean, how do we stack up with jurisdictions around us, like cities, in terms of, are we in the range? Are we way high? Are we way low? It's just a measure, a way of looking at, again, if you will,
And I didn't see anything
competition.
in the
But
study that was brought
in that
back
study,
to us
it didn't have a
address that.
benchmark. It's just, you always see a benchmark, and so we'll put together a benchmark. You try to compare apples to apples when you look at another.
We have
consider,
comparative
but-
rates too.
That's what
other
we want to look
communities
at.
in this area.
So I thought,
we'll-
I thought there
we'll
was some of
spend
that
some time
information
looking
around.
Yeah,
'cause-
and we're way low
Yeah,
compared
that's-
to.
But we can't base what we charge
Yeah.
ours
No.
on what somebody else does, because it's got to cover our expenses. And if we're just,
Right.
if we keep holding back because we want to be lower or whatever, if we don't address it, we're,
Yeah, that's not the rationale
No.
to do. We
It's
cover.
a
We
good
do what we have to
comparison.
do to cover our costs and everything. I'm just saying it's a benchmark, especially. I mean,
For
I'd say a
information.
company's coming in and they want to look at what it's going to cost them to locate here. They're going to say, well,
Mm-hmm.
you know, in Independence it's about average. That's good, but if they're way high,
Yeah,
may
that's
look,
right.
you know, may drive them somewhere else. It's just a benchmark, the way of seeing how we are in the market.
Yeah, and I would like to note that, you know, this is proposed, we go into it, it becomes approved if through our continued efforts here leading into 18, we find a better, cheaper means by which to make the increases and minimize those down, we'll absolutely bring it to you and suggest that we go that route and understanding what it is. But I think along with that, there's going to have to be some cost savings as well. So, again, when you start looking at that, we're either eating up cash or we're cutting out projects.
Okay.
Okay.
Done.
Any comments? Final comment?
No, I think Mike's done a fantastic job, and we'll continue to work on it and
Well, this is something that's needed to be done. That needed to be
have an exact
completed.
rate structure for you to adopt.
Okay.
Fell asleep.
There's some charts in there for you that you can look at when we send you the slideshow here. Okay. Sanitation. Okay,
debt.
now.
Or industrial. fund.
Yep, industrial fund. A lot of these funds that we're going to be looking at, there's not a lot of activity in them. They come in, bring in a little income, they just empty back out. The expenses we're seeing here is for MAC and the chamber. And I think that's, I believe that's all that's in there. Any questions on this?
No.
Okay. The Economic Development Fund here. And you all, I'll let you reference the pages that you have in front of us, which are those two charts. And I'll go ahead and move the slide forward, just kind of hits highlights there. The tax revenues in this particular fund are derived by franchise fees primarily. The other income is appropriated fund balances. Capital outlay for 2018 coming out of this fund is city street project that we talked about earlier, coming out of the street and traffic department. The reader Peter Pan extension as it relates to what we've been talking about out there at Labette. I wanted to go ahead and get that stuck in there and at least identify it. And it's not saying that that's we were going to pull the trigger on that, but I felt like we needed to identify that. We have the Cessna inducement. I have that at $150,000. It's roughly what it's been running the last several years. We'd love for it to be a lot more than that, but fortunately that's what all it is. Downtown buildings, got it in there at $100,000. This is also the fund that we paid the economic development piece of the Labette Health earlier this year. Other questions I can answer for you on this?
Nope.
Okay. The educational sales tax fund. This is the 1% of the 3% that we collect. We bring that in. We send part of that off to the school district. The other part we retain to pay the portion of the bond, the
Debt
Series
service.
2010 debt service.
Yeah.
We hold that back. So that's what this represents.
Did you say that was the 1 cent sales tax?
Yes. Yeah. 1% general fund, 1% this, and then 1% for the special use. And again, as you're going to see in the special use in this, kept the sales tax flat, so we're not seeing any increases there. Okay, as we move forward, we got the special use sales tax. We've probably got a few items here that we need to talk about. Again, revenue flat. There's some items in this fund that you're going to see that we accounted for in the 2017 revised as well as 2018 proposed. What we have put in the revised and the proposed are items that we have identified that we are wanting to move forward with for sure. In the 2017 budget that was approved, I think a lot of it was just placeholders put in there just in case. And we also have a significant portion that was set aside in the special use sales tax for the City Hall improvements that was nearly $900,000. So even though we've earmarked that and set it back, we're not anticipating spending that money in 2017 or 2018 for that particular project. Some of the items that we're looking at addressing in the capital outlay for this, and this is we can get into more detail on it. Can you see this all right, Leonard?
What?
Can you read this all right? Now, I can drill in. I may have to open up another sheet here to give you exacts or look at my book here. So the uses of the special use sales tax coming out of the capital outlay department, which is where everything comes out of. Bond and interest support, $704,000 that goes into the bond and interest fund. That's for 2017 revised. It spikes up just a little bit in 2018 to $707,000. Airport projects, it's 18.9 for 2017, and that takes care of the AWAS project. And then we have $270,000 worth of projects to be paid out of special use in 2018. We have other general fund projects, 88,000 identified and still sitting out there for 2017. We have other stuff that we've spent, but it's already been spent. But this is additional general fund projects were pulled over. Then we have $253,000 identified, pulled out of the general fund for 2018 that was moved over to special use sales tax. And we have general fund transfers in 2017 of $210,000. That's 2017 revised, and identified $325 for 2018 to help pull as far as general fund support to start pulling that cash balance back up.
So how have you broke down the four categories? Is that represented in what you're showing?
It
Or is that
is.
just
So
total?
what I've what I did, those were the areas that I was seeing that as getting the biggest use of what's coming out of what we're identifying in 2017 going forward to finish out the year plus 2018. And it was in those 4 different areas.
So did you say you left the money in building improvements for Old City Hall?
It's still sitting there, so I mean, it's not, it's earmarked, but it's
Yeah.
not. It's not encumbered by any means. It could be spent elsewhere, but it's there. So it's not really pulling down the balance. It's keeping the balance in there. We've got the cash built up, but through that special use sales tax report that I provide you all, it shows that it is pulling out of that balance. But it is not encumbered cash or an encumbered project at this point.
But it's still there to be used.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I didn't see a spreadsheet on that, but you're gonna send.
There wasn't, but I mean, just through our regular reports. I updated it for Craig a couple weeks ago, and we can get that to you just as part of the commission meetings.
And then if you'll send that too, the narrative really helps explain.
Sure. And then, and as you and I talked, and here again, we're going to get into it a little bit further when I get down to the bond and interest fund, which will be here just real quick, because I think we'll move through these other funds pretty fast. It'll give you a breakout of all the bonds and where all the funds are coming from to pay for those. And Kelly did a really nice job of breaking out in the special use and the capital outlay, the 5-year capital plan. Was that included in their packages?
Yeah, Craig.
Yeah, it was.
Formatted
Yeah.
it.
Okay.
There's a
Yes,
call
it's in there.
in the capital
Yeah.
plan, there's a column, but if you look on this, it's by fund. And it
Yeah.
breaks out that special use
Yeah. Yes.
tax fund, although it doesn't break it out into which quarter percent it's coming from, but that's the
Yeah.
next step. I made a note.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
that.
I
That
identify
was really
that.
helpful.
So yeah, you from a capital project, you'll be
Yeah.
able to see those things. Gary, anything I can answer for you on that?
No, thank you, Mike.
Okay. We ready to move forward? Okay. General fund employee benefits, money in, money out. That's supported to take care of those items that we discussed earlier.
Okay.
The library fund, again, money in, money out. We got 4.79 mills for them. In addition to that, they get some motor vehicle tax money. So that's all kicked back to them, flushes out.
With the drop in the assessed valuation, they are aware.
Excuse me?
And with the
Sounds
drop,
strange. The library gets motor vehicle fuel tax.
All these budgeted funds, they get it.
Is that right?
so the library fund though is going to go down because the assessed valuation went down.
Just a little bit. I mean, they asked for
$12,000.
yeah.
Yeah.
So and I guess I do want to bring this up because part of their request back when they came in here a couple months ago, they asked for their 4.796 whatever. I've kept maintained that, but they also asked for the additional 25. That is built into the general fund. That $25,000 in there.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Special Parks and Recreation Fund. This is in part supported and revenue driven by alcohol tax. So a portion of it goes here, a portion of it goes into the special alcohol.
Okay.
We support certain things out of this as it concerns the ash, as it concerns swimming pool. I think Barb's got some opportunity. She can get some money out of here, but it's not real significant. It's $30,000 a year. The special alcohol, same thing here. I'm showing 30,000 in, 30,000 out. How you all elect to make that disbursement of that 30,000? I know that we've got two different people that have requested funds. We've traditionally given all of that money to Fort County, and this is the fund that comes out of. City on the Hill has been in here and requested a portion of that. So there's not more money to divvy up. That's what it is. Yeah, if more comes in, there's more available, but it's been pretty consistent over the years.
I need to change things, okay?
Oh, sure.
That's good because
Bring it back to
we are
order.
bringing the meeting back to order after our recess.
We are, and we have. We were finishing up special use, and so or a special alcohol fund. I don't know that we need to make any additional as they request the funds going forward, and then it'd just be commission action to
I mean, extra money we
provide
stay
those
with Fort
out.
County.
Liability insurance, again, this fund that brings in ad valorem dollars, and that's there to support the additional the variety of different liability insurances we have. That fund can go up and down, so it can retain some balances, and it can be operating in the red, but then it's just adjusted the next year to bring it back in through ad valorem in the mill. Any questions on that? The Memorial Hall tax credits. Obviously, there is no additional revenue coming into this. We do have some tax credits that we have not been cashed in. But in essence, we have for the 2017 revised. We're looking at transferring $165,000, and that will go back to the general fund to support the Building D electricity. Then we also have an additional 197 for 2018 that's proposed, and that again is part of some of those transfers that we're making, trying to build up the cash reserves back into the general fund.
Okay.
Questions there, Leonard?
No.
Okay. Quality of life sales tax. Again, this is a non-revenue generating fund today. I think this particular fund was replaced by the special use sales tax fund that we have now. The budget items there for 2017 revised in 2018, this is where a couple of the projects exist for the Memorial Hall. And this is also here to support part of the swimming pool. And I think there's a library piece of it here as well.
Okay.
I think this kind of brings us where we had talked about in the past on maintenance of some buildings. Once
Yeah.
this fund is gone,
That's and that
which is soon.
that's
how
the
we're gonna-
library, the pool, and
And
Memorial
here,
Hall.
and then this is going to get us real close. There's not going to be much left at all, and once it's done, it's done. It's not coming back.
But can we, like in the future, can we use this category, quality of life, buildings, or something that, we've faced it with water, sewer, not addressing maintenance. Can we set up a fund that we allocate each year to put so much money in that we can build up some money for maintenance?
We're either going to have to do that,
facilities.
and I think we're going to look at some of the funds and the way some of the funds are structured as part of the general fund and everything else, and then addressing some of these reserves for our assets, so we can take care of them going on down the road. But I think it would have to be supported either through sales tax initiative that we have through the special use and the building fund there, or back through the general fund, and maybe even potentially the economic development fund, because there are economic development opportunities that do exist by having this building. So I think we have three different resources there once this is depleted to continue to support this.
And we're going to have to look at something of the special use sales tax. What's it got? 5 more years and it sunsets.
Yes.
So then, ongoing maintenance, we're going to need to start looking at how we're going to get funds to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And by this money going, now we just cut the pie of building improvements into smaller pieces.
That's right.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's right.
certainly have.
So maybe, make a note to kind of come up with
Got
some direction for us on how we can look at that in the future.
Okay. Additional questions on this quality of life? Yep. Now we're to the bond and interest fund. And ladies and gentlemen, I have fantastic news. This is our last fund.
And there is good news. There is good news.
I told you, just give me the 5 minutes. We've seen this come down, and I don't know specific reasons. I didn't get into some of the past years completely. But we're starting to see a lot of the older bonds pay off. We've also had some of those bonds refund over the course of the last several years. But our ad valorem needs for the last 2 years, both 2017, what was budgeted, and also what we're proposing for this year. And again, this does also include motor vehicle tax. It is very small, so we were able to reduce that and redirect some of those monies into the other funds that we're increasing. I'm going to move ahead here a little bit. So there's the capital outlay, and then our other income. The other income is where I'm pulling money in from the other funds to support the repayment of these bonds, and the capital outlay is the actual repayment of the said bonds.
Do we have that slide in here?
And there's the slide of the bonds. I've listed out all the different bonds and the repayment, and exactly for 2018.
Okay, you should have that slide in.
How
Bond and interest fund.
I don't have it. I don't.
are you talking about this slide, or are you talking about the bond, the
First
debt
one.
schedule?
The spreadsheet.
No, you're right.
I don't
Must
have
have
it.
got cut off.
We can get you that. That's
yeah, I'll
not
get
a
it to you.
problem.
Yeah.
It was cut off there.
We got a couple of them of the series 2007 they're going to be retiring. I think there's a combination of 3 of them. Two of them are retiring this year or in 2018, and the other one retires in 2017. So those pieces will be done. But this is the breakout here on this particular slide that tells you where all the stuff is. The ad valorem piece to this is a very small percentage of what the repayment is on this stuff that's setting up there. The 2015 stuff is broken out in between the water fund and the street fund and the special use sales tax. The 2013 series That's all ADA. 2010 is all the educational sales tax, and right now, through that refunding process, they're only obligated to pay the interest. That's all it's due on that. I think through the schedule, we've been collecting principal, and I do have a fund build up in there for that, so they'll probably be in time in a position that it could be paid off early, or they would have money that we could reallocate back to them. The other piece of the 27 series that does have a little longer to go is as the sewer outfit out there at the Country Village. That's paid by the Water Department. And also this 2012 is funded by the ADA Special Use Sales Tax.
So that mill rate actually drops about 1.1 mil.
Yeah, it's down there. It's
1.3
not much.
mils.
I mean, yeah, it's just right under 1 mil.
That's right. That's right. Okay.
So what can I answer for you on that? Does that get your question answered, Leonard? A couple months late, unfortunately.
No, I think that really does. Well, you got it broke out like that, showing which fund it
Yeah.
comes from.
Yeah.
Yeah, that clarifies it.
Yeah, I mean, it's clear. I mean, we went back and we dug everything up. Kelly was a great help in understanding what some of those funds were. We got the bond stuff out, and I said, okay, now I know who's paying what, and I can ensure that we're getting the right funds withdrawn and brought in over there to support
Yeah.
that.
And then the next would be like for the special use sales tax. How does that relate with the revenue coming in? Are we committed to, like the ADA? I guess we've got 2 coming out of bonds. So are we still generating revenue?
Sufficient, yes. Yeah,
And the
it's
street project, are
we're
we
still on the positive
generating?
side. No, it's eating up a lot,
Okay.
and we don't have a whole lot of room to operate there. But no, we do have room to maneuver around in there.
Yeah, that was a question. And this is back maybe even before you came in as city clerk. We were looking to see what was committed, how much we would have to look at for streets or for the sidewalks. So it was really hard to plan what we were going to do. We knew had the need, but not how much money was in that.
I think, and
category.
we'll continue to provide you that. But we've got room in all the areas. Streets tight. I'll tell you that right now. Streets is
Yeah.
tight, but we have room to do things in excess of what we presented to you tonight.
Okay.
For 27 and 2018. And we will keep you abreast of that and anything else that we would bring to the table, whether we have room for
Yeah,
that.
thank you.
You bet.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
that street part of it is, we haven't been able to do anything to any residential streets.
Well, there's we got a piece in here. Well, I guess actually that's on the economic development, but we've got $150,000 in there, so we're going to start on that. We're going to try to plug along and continue on down the road with that on an annual basis.
There's some areas, 11th and Maple, that are really bad, that it looks like it's going to need extensive work to fix. There's always water running across, and it just keeps
Over by Brahms.
Brahms.
Well, Mike's here. I think you've
Yeah.
looked at that. Don't you have a plan?
Yeah.
And it's groundwater, it's not, Lemon and Maple, it's not hot water.
You know, some of those projects that would be a little more expensive that we can't do, we could maybe have some money in that quarter-cent sales tax to
Yeah,
address
and I
some
think
issues.
even at $150,000 a year, I think that
Yeah.
we can find the support there to do that on an
Oh,
annual
that
basis.
is some residential streets too.
Because
Yeah.
Honestly, 150,000 is.
I was gonna say that
very
won't-
much.
That won't do much, but it's better than
Maybe
what
it's
we've
pretty
been doing.
expensive, so it's not going to do a lot, but we need to be doing something.
No, but it could do if it's really bad, a short 1 block, 2 block, or it'd be better to do something than nothing, or at least
Exactly.
hold it for 2 years and then do a bigger
Fifth
project.
Street by the stadium.
Yeah, well, yeah, Pine, and we got,
Got a lot of.
we do.
So I would open it up. Anything else I can answer for you on bond and interest fund, Gary? Anything from you?
Gary? No.
No. Okay.
That's enough.
Open it up to any other questions, and that's all I have for you, gentlemen.
So then Thursday night, then you would ask the commission then to approve publication
Yes.
of the budget
For
based
public
upon
hearing.
this presentation that you've
Yes.
given us tonight, which is this publication page.
Right.
Yeah. And that sets the limits on the upside.
Yes.
Okay. And then that hearing would be August 14th, 2017. That's a Monday, right?
August 14th.
It is a Monday.
It is a Monday.
It is a Monday. We set it special because you have to adopt it by the 15th.
So I will keep.
So that gives us
We would.
hearing on the Monday. If you had to change it, we could do it on the following day if we had to.
And then one thing just to know: once we publish it, it can't be increased.
Right.
It can be decreased, but it can't be increased. So, any other things that we may want to think about? I know it's been mentioned here, possibly about at least capturing in the general fund on the property tax side, at least taking it back up to where we were at last year. And if you all come back to me, and it doesn't have to be tonight, but if you were to come back tomorrow, whatever, we can make those adjustments and get that in the public hearing before I publish that, because I don't have to publish it until the 31st. So we got a few days to work on some things. But yeah, we are requesting that come Thursday that you give us authorization
Okay.
to publish as presented tonight.
I don't have any more questions.
Gary, any more questions?
No, sir.
Okay. Without any more questions, any more comments? Craig, anybody?
Nope.
Then
Well, Thursday.
we're ready to adjourn.
I make a motion, we adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye
Aye.
and go home. This is a record.